Always make sure you finish chewing your candy before you get on stage, otherwise it looks funny. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the leadership sessions on security in AWS. And this is one of those opportunities where I get to talk about things that I really enjoy. And security is one of those practices that benefits from mechanisms just like operations does. Mechanisms are something that is built into the soul of an Amazonian. Well, first off, what is a mechanism? A mechanism is a repeatable behavior, a repeatable function that's driven by a certain set of criteria and metrics. And mechanisms are critically important to us in the security world because they allow us to do two things. First, to make sure that we don't miss an important piece, whether it's understanding what's going on, taking the right reaction, informing the right party, et cetera. But they also allow us to train our staff. The biggest challenge that many of us have, in fact, in the security space is that our job is always growing. We certainly have no lack of employment opportunity at the moment in the security space, and unfortunately, as the world turns, we still get more opportunity to be employed. So we need to be able to bring up those amongst us who are new and teach them the ways that others have learned over time. One of the most difficult things to do in the security world is understanding what's really important. Now, if you haven't read Agatha Christie, you really should. This particular book, by the way, Caribbean Mystery, has 4.5 stars out of 5 on Amazon.com. But the point here is that learning how to understand what you need to pay attention to versus what you shouldn't be wasting time on, especially in time-critical situations, is something that's very, very challenging because it's a judgment call. And teaching your newer staff how to do that often takes time. Now, I want to start off with a little bit of levity here. And you'll see some of these throughout my presentation. Where this comes from is, if you've ever heard one of my talks before, you'll hear that Amazon AWS, as an example, we don't have a security operations center in the way that most people do. There is no room with video monitors on the wall. There is no place where we have people watching them because I believe two things. One, that you're too late if you're depending on a human being to identify something on a monitor. And guaranteed they're going to be eating dinner in the bathroom or talking on the phone when something important happens. But two, you must be depending on automation to do the job. Your systems should recognize the problem and then invoke automation to contain and remedy. So what does that mean for our security operations staff? It means literally, we have one on-call security engineer whose job it is to babysit the automation. That is what they do. Now, when something happens and events do occur, that engineer is responsible for ensuring the right things happen with the following on-call staff. Our on-call rotates every 4 hours, and the handoff process is driven by a mechanism. It's a tool that categorizes all the important things that are going on, who's doing what next, and what actions has to be followed up on by when. As part of that process, the oncoming security engineer is required to acknowledge that they've received this handoff, and they're going to take the actions that are required. It started that people just responded with, okay, we got it, ACK, et cetera. And then what happens? They got creative. And people started acknowledging the handoff with memes. Initially, hey, that's cool, it's fun, people are enjoying their job, they're showing a little bit of creativity, et cetera. But then it occurred to me, they're also doing something fundamentally important. They are teaching each other through the handoff process what is important. This meme that's up on the screen right here, it's Mario Kart, awesome. The guy, the SecOps lead, the SecOps primary, who's on the bike in the front there, and that is his actual face, is being chased by Sev2 tickets. Sev2, by the way, in our parlance, Sev1 is the whole world's down. Sev2 is something really important is going on. Sev3 is something important is going on. Sev4 and 5, yeah, we'll get to it when we can. So he's got a bunch of Sev2s that are chasing him that he has to pay attention to and that are going to cause him a bad day if he doesn't. But flying over the top of that is a blue shell. And that's an email from Eric. Eric is a distinguished engineer on our team. But he does something critically important in the process, the mechanism of training our staff. He teaches people when to escalate. and when to engage, and when it's appropriate to bring something up to a higher authority in the organization. And by putting this in front of people, they actually think about the process of escalation, and I'll talk more about escalation in a little bit. But it's a great way to communicate information, and it's turned into a mechanism across our organization. So as part of the handoff process, of course, you get the kind of standard memes, which is the fodder of all our world's security operations staff. But it's become something that people look forward to seeing, and as a result, they are super focused on what they need to be doing with the next handoff, and it just works. And it also includes instructions on when they need to go higher in the organization. So when a particular ticket is out there, someone's working on it, maybe it's not going as rapidly as it needs to be, we focus again on escalation. Escalate, escalate, escalate is our mantra. We want to know what's impacting our customers, when the next action is supposed to take place, who's on the hook, and what they're going to do with it. And you'll note that it says escalate to Steve. I want that. I want people to be feeding data up to me about what's going on in the organization. I see every handoff every 4 hours, but I want people to be thinking about it all the time, and we reinforce that through this process. And of course, you have to know that people are just on the ball and they're doing what they need to, so you get this normal kind of ACK handoff in the process as well. Shifting gears, let's talk about a different kind of mechanism. This is an institutional mechanism, a process to ensure that every team across our company, even though the company is growing at a ridiculously fast rate, is doing the things that we want. We have a program that we call Security Expectations. It's something that I run. Every year, we set a series of goals to all of our VPs in the company, and we measure their progress against those goals relentlessly. Now, measuring progress is something that everybody understands. We've got to see how we're doing here. But the measurement process should be tailored for the individual organization that you're in. At Amazon, we are a metrics-driven organization. So the way we measure progress is we report the metrics for compliance with security expectations on a regular basis. In Amazon, that means that every month we sit down with Andy Jassy, the CEO, and we go through the gory detail of who is where in meeting their security expectations goals. The CEO of the company sits down for 2 hours a month and goes through the how are people doing against expectations. And of course, in typical Andy fashion, he digs right into the data and he starts asking really hard questions to the VPs. No one, by the way, wants to be the person who's the outlier on the graph. And that gets exactly the reaction we want. People start banging out emails to their teams immediately saying, what's going on with this? Why aren't we making more progress? What's the blocker? What are the next steps, et cetera? And it's using the institutional behaviors to our benefit. The expectations themselves, there's nothing earth-shattering about them. They're all things that you should be doing right now, whether it's everything from reducing human access to information to enforcing encryption in the right places to patching and all the other security vegetables that aren't particularly enjoyable, but that we absolutely have to do. But down at the bottom of the slide are the key performance indicators. And key performance indicators are the things that we care about a lot. And you'll notice that one of them is time spent. Why do we care about that particular metric? Because security should not just be a tax on an organization. In contrary, security should be an enabler for an organization. So we track the time spent in complying with our security requirements so that my team can drive better tooling to help our service teams meet our security goals without as much burden. That's one of the ways that we can keep up the crazy pace that we have of innovation across the organization. The second is on audits. We measure the amount of time that our service teams have to spend complying with audit requirements. You all have driven us to be audited through an enormous number of different regimes out there, everything from PCI to SOX to ISO standards in various parts of the world, financial industry organization standards, et cetera. And all of them require evidence, proof that we're doing what we say we're doing. Well, traditionally, auditors would come in and they'll say, hi, I want all this evidence, and then the owner of a service will have to spend days, weeks producing that material to hand it back to an auditor. Shouldn't be that way. So we have developers on the audit teams in our organization whose job it is to produce evidence out of the services, to produce tooling to make evidence collection easier, and we measure them against their job as well. COE is another mechanism that's a real favorite. The point of a COE, or correction of error, is to understand deeply what happened in a problem. And this is something that evolved out of the operations world, where we need to understand why systems broke, what impact there was to customers, and what we're doing about preventing those in the future or fixing them. The point of a COE, though, and this is critically important, is it is not a process to assign blame. It should not be punitive. It should be learning. It should be about how do we do this better in the future. But it also gives you a library of information that you can look at later on as a developer and say, oh, if I do that, I'm going to stub my toe thusly. Somebody has already done that. I don't wish to. It is a teaching tool for the organization. You'll notice that the mechanisms that I'm talking about often repeat as teaching tools, and that's intentional. The best part, of course, out of the COE process is the 5 whys, understanding exactly what happened and getting down to actionable root causes. By the way, human error is rarely an appropriate actionable root cause. Why? Because I would say that any time a human caused an error in a system, it's because of an actual deficiency in tooling. You shouldn't have a human on a keyboard. You should have a script running that does what that human would, or a tool built that does what that human would. Nowhere is that more obvious in AWS than in S3. Amazon S3 is our storage system, and one of the things that we did as part of security expectations was we told all of our service teams that we wanted to reduce human access to data by 80%, 80. Got the expected response from people, which is, you're a lunatic, go away. But in reality, when we pushed people on it, it drove them to build tools to do what the humans did. Now we have a little bit of an advantage. One of the tools that my team owns is called Chronicle, where we record all of the commands that are issued on our Linux boxes by our staff, so that we can build a map of what they're doing when they're on those machines and understand why they were there. That allowed the service teams to prioritize the tooling work. Once the service teams realized the increase in availability that happened when they got people off of the boxes, they were really in favor of this particular goal, and it made an enormous difference. Addressing root causes, actions, timelines, and owners. There's some nuances in doing that that are critically important. Actions and timelines, just to give you some examples there, the actions should have deadlines and assigned owners. Everybody knows that. The dates should be proximal. Our rule internally, and you can use it if you want, is if you're in the quarter during which the delivery is supposed to take place, there has to be a date. If you're within the year, it has to be within the quarter. And most importantly, we never delete a date. So if a date changes, we strike it through and leave it in the status with the new date appended at the end. As a leader, that allows me to audit really quickly how well teams are doing against particular remediations. They can't hide between an ever-shifting date. And it's a super easy way to start saying, there are 5 strikeouts there. Why is that? Again, it's the mechanism. And that kind of sloppiness is indicative of problems that need to be addressed for a lot of reasons. Just another bit of humor here. People love to use the logo in the right places. You saw it on the airplane. This is just a simple handoff from one engineer to another saying, I've got it. But let's talk now about what's happened in 2018, where we've gone from a security perspective. Why are we talking about this? You guys, this is why. If you look at the corpus of customers that we have in AWS, it goes everything from life sciences to financial services to agricultural systems, et cetera. The 76, and I think there are 76 logos up there, companies that are listed on that screen really do have the entire breadth of the IT world represented. And why is that important? It's because we then get to see the work, to understand the needs of all of those different people, and they benefit from their other companions on the services. What does that mean? Every time we make one of our security services better for one customer, it benefits all of the others at the same time. When we build a new detection into GuardDuty, our intrusion detection service, for example, it's not just available for Shell. It's also available for everybody else who's out there, including, by the way, my son, who's a university student who uses the free tier at school to do work. So he's got the same access to security services than Amazon.com does. 239 new security features this year. That's a crazy pace of innovation, but it's also emblematic of the focus that we put on security as a company. An enormous part of our total investment is focused on delivery of security features across the organization. And let's start out with one of the most fundamental security features that we have. This is an example of evolution over time as a result of customer demand. So in the beginning, there were hypervisors. All of the core functionality of a computer system, the virtual machine management, et cetera, were operated by a modified version of the Xen hypervisor that sat on the same physical host as where your data is processed. Okay, that makes sense. That's sort of the standard in the industry. It's where everybody's been for a long time. Now, of course, we dramatically reduced the code base of the hypervisor itself. We trimmed out all the pieces that we didn't need for two reasons. One is availability. If the code's not there, it can't have a bug and have a hard day. But the second is we believe really strongly in reduction in surface area. If the code's not there, it can't be exploited by somebody. How many people have installed Linux on their boxes in their production environments, and if you go check, does it still have cups running on there? Do you have printers attached to your boxes? No. How many CVEs are there against cups in the last 6 months? I don't have that many fingers. So minimization of surface area is something that's an easy step to take, but gives you tremendous security benefits out the other end. And that caused us to get thinking about how do we get this software away from where our customers' data is? So a few years ago, we launched the C3 and C4 instance types. We took advantage of some work that we'd done with one of our acquisitions, Annapurna Labs, who builds silicon. And we built network hardware devices that moved the network virtualization and processing off of the main CPU in the physical hosts that have your EC2 instances on them. That was great because it reduced the load on the main CPU, which meant more of it was available for you. The second thing was, though, it separated a very security-critical component from the general purpose operating system. And that's the firewalling and separation between customers. Those are now enforced in hardware on a separate device that has no login on the main device. Side benefit, by the way, network packet throughput was dramatically improved as well because we built it intentionally to do high network traffic. The C4s, we made an incremental step. We offloaded the storage processing to a dedicated storage processor as well. Awesome. Again, it's about more dependable throughput, higher throughput, enforcement of encryption where it's required, and key management not on the main processor. Security benefits that also have performance benefits. That's cool. 2017, last year, at Peter DeSantis' talk, we announced the Nitro hypervisor. This is a completely new EC2 hypervisor based on a version of KVM. And it was the first instance to offload the entire EC2 stack into a separate processor card. Cool, it's another step in the same process. Get everything away from the main processor. It's better from a security perspective. It's better from a performance perspective. But it has one incredible difference. You know, in the Xen world, there's that management plane. It's the DOM0 that's part of that system. That's the generic Linux box that you can log into to manage the host. There is no DOM0 in a Nitro-based system. There is no interactive login onto that host. What does that mean? Our staff cannot log into the box where your data sits. That makes me really happy. Get the humans away from the data. It removes entire attack vectors. It makes nation states unhappy because they're really, really good at collecting credentials and behaving like normal people out there. Speaking of credentials, let's move on to the development and build side of the world. AWS Secrets Manager is our service that allows you to deploy and control access to secrets that you would normally have to build into code, which is obviously a really bad idea. Things like passwords for databases and that sort of thing. Secrets Manager now supports private link, so you can address Secrets Manager without even going outside your VPC. It's integrated with CloudFormation, so you can build CloudFormation templates that include secrets being moved from one device to another, one system to another, one service to another, directly. And we've met the compliance requirements for HIPAA, PCI, and ISO. Means you can use this to build your credit card processing pipeline if you want to. Another cool feature that we added this year is resource-based policies. Let's say you have a set of secrets that you control, and you want to give another account access to a secret out of that pile, but you don't want to give it to them. Secrets Manager allows you to do that kind of cross-account resource limitation where you can say this particular secret should be available to that account, but only under these constraints. And it means you can revoke those if you want to, which again is about reducing the surface area and making things more secure. Virtual Private Cloud, this sort of fundamental building block of security across the organization, carves up our infrastructure, makes it part of yours. You get to decide how it's configured, et cetera. We added a bunch of features to services like EFS, which now supports AWS VPN and inter-region VPC peering. Bring your own IP is now integrated with VPC directly. It's generally available across our regions. And Network Load Balancer and Private Link now also support inter-region peering, so you can create your private networks that go across multiple AWS regions and operate seamlessly across them. That allows you to enforce the constraints that you want for access to your information, no matter where it is across the world. Remember we were talking a lot about the constraints around your information? There's a lot of policy, a lot of rules that we enforce on your behalf out of that. AWS Config is our service that allows you to understand how your infrastructure is set up. We continue to add AWS Config functionality into additional services, and it allows you to assess, audit, and evaluate the status of your infrastructure at any point in time. It continuously monitors and records what's going on in your infrastructure so you can see who did what when and what was the result. Seems like a sensible thing to do from an operations perspective. You're able to dive into problems and understand why they occurred. It's also really key from a compliance perspective because it allows you to prove to auditors what happened over what period of time. But more importantly, it allows you to understand exactly what happened in a security event. What was open, what was closed, who had access to what, when, where, et cetera. It does all of that out of bounds of your infrastructure itself so that you can set up rules where the security team may have access, for example, to the config output, but the service teams may not. And that gives you that firewall, that separation of duties that's useful in many circumstances there. The compliance history of config is something that's often underrated. It's often misunderstood. How often has an auditor asked you, on this date and time, what was the state of your infrastructure, and can you prove it to me? If you're using config, you can. It's made a big difference for us internally. It's something we require all of our service teams to use so that we can understand what's going on, but it's an easy way to help make sure that your auditors are satisfied with things that are happening in your infrastructure. Amazon Inspector is one of my team's services. My team owns services like GuardDuty, which is our intrusion detection service, and Macy, which is our data discovery and user behavior analytics service. But we also own Inspector. And Inspector's job is to examine your EC2 instances and look for vulnerabilities. For example, if you want to understand which CVEs are present on the software that's running on your particular virtual machine, Inspector can do that through the agent. But customers asked us to extend Inspector to help them understand how their EC2 instances were interacting with the outside world. And so to do that, we offered agentless network assessments. So where we can determine for you the network reachability of any piece of your infrastructure from the outside world or from other areas. The really cool thing about agentless inspection is that it uses a set of tools that were built by our Provable Security initiative. Provable Security is our team that focuses on writing proofs using software to understand the operation of systems. So it's not that you have to take my word for it. You can actually calculate a mathematical proof of the behavior of a system. Those tools also allow you to do things like calculate exactly what path there is or is not between anywhere on the outside of your infrastructure and any particular object inside your infrastructure. Now, if you're using the agentless network inspection process and you're using the Amazon Inspector agent itself, you can not only say, here's the path that gets to my infrastructure, but you can say, and here is the service that is listening on that port that is available, and here is what it is vulnerable or not vulnerable to. So you get the complete picture from end to end of potential problem to exploitable opportunity. It's not a guessing game of, well, is this thing really available to the internet on the other end? GuardDuty, which is our intrusion detection service, we added 3 major new threat detections this year. Unauthorized access is our sort of generic major category, and within that we have a bunch of minor categories, Tor clients, Tor relays. I don't know how many of you want Tor clients running on your corporate networks. We don't, but it's something that we want to be able to tell you about. The other piece is Tor relays, which are much more interesting because you're proxying other people's traffic through your resources, which is something that you may want to understand that's going on one way or the other. The fun thing about these is when we rolled these out, we didn't tell a lot of the customers about it ahead of time, and we got some very surprised calls from people saying, I had no idea this was going on, thank you so much for increasing the visibility I have to my infrastructure. The same thing with the Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin mining is always one of those really interesting double-edged swords, because people think about Bitcoin mining as typically a problem where it's an outside entity has broken into a virtual machine of yours and installed Bitcoin miners on there, which nobody likes because that's a path from the outside in which can cause all sorts of headaches. But where it's been most prevalent, though, has been people within corporations abusing company resources for their own benefit. Okay, great, that's an HR problem. But if they're installing Bitcoin mining software, what else are they doing on that box? And what else do those people have access to? And so giving people that visibility has been important for them to help them understand what is their total risk from a person perspective, as well as from a technical perspective. GuardDuty is now integrated with CloudWatch Events, so you can customize the notification intervals that you want to get about events going on in your organization. It's HIPAA eligible, which means you can use it to help you protect health records across your estate. And it's allowing us to integrate directly now with multiple accounts and regions with CloudFormation stack sets. That's always been one of the most difficult things to do in AWS, is finding a way to do multi-account, multi-region deployments. Stack sets helps you do that and reduces a large work set down to something that's much more manageable. Cool fact, this is a little bit old, but it gives you a flavor anyway, that we're processing about 93 million flow log records per second on behalf of our customers right now. And of course, that number just keeps going up as our customer volume increases. Okay, that's a cool number. Why does it matter? Because what it means is that every time that goes up, we get better visibility into the behavior of the internet as a whole. And as we get better visibility in the behavior of the internet as a whole, we develop better detections, which allow us to protect you better as a result. It's this flywheel effect where the more people using the service, the better the detections, the better the security, the quicker the detection interval, the better off everybody is. Hey, the clicker does work. Now, we all know that Amazon has a history of decreasing prices. I think there have been about 66 major price drops as of July of 2018. This is something that we take really seriously, and it's one of those things that I think makes us a little bit different from other folks out there. When we look at the way our services operate, we're constantly asking ourselves, how can we be more efficient about operating them? Well, everybody does that. You don't want to keep spending money if you don't have to. But the difference is that when we make improvements into the efficiency of our systems, and believe me, scale does drive efficiency. You get better at it as you get bigger. It also means that we can think about, should we drop prices for customers? And we do. And the net result for customers is that it allows them to cover workloads with security tools that they never would have been able to before, because we reduce the price an enormous amount, and it does vary a little bit based on the individual customer, how many flow logs they're processing, that sort of thing. But as you can see from the numbers on the screen, which are representative of normal, real customer workloads, it's a dramatic reduction in spend across organizations. And that's resulted in millions and millions and millions of dollars in savings to our customers out the other end, even as we improve our detection speed and detection efficiency. Now, everybody who uses the internet knows about securing your data appropriately. S3 buckets have always been an opportunity for customers to stub their toes. Even though every S3 bucket's access controls are closed by default, people can make mistakes, and they can open them up to the internet and not understand what that means in terms of access to their data. We heard the requests from customers. We built a tool that was released recently that allows you to block public access to your S3 buckets programmatically. You can enforce that so that people cannot accidentally open those up across your organizations. It's designed to be easy to use. It's accessible from the console, of course, or the CLI, or the APIs. You can even build it in CloudFormation templates, for example. This is an example of what happens on the console itself, where you're deciding who has access and who can manage those policies, et cetera. And then at the end of the process, we're saying, OK, we're going to update this. Really, really, really make sure that you want to, because we're going to turn off access that we hope you don't need for your production applications. But the point here is we're making it much, much easier for you to do the right thing from a security perspective. Now, we talked about the center of our world, whether it was Amazon EC2 and the hypervisors, et cetera. And we talked about the services that are on the outside of that center that we're building out. And now we're all the way out to the edge and talk about the changes that we made for IoT Device Defender. IoT Device Defender, by the way, helps you adhere to security best practices, and it continuously monitors those little bitty end devices that you've got hanging out there in the wilderness that are so fragile, so small, and can be easily misconfigured for security vulnerability purposes. Device Defender is one of those things that has turned from a security tool into an operations tool as well. One of our customers has tens of millions of endpoint devices out there that are in people's homes. One of them is in mine. And they made a mistake where they started reissuing device IDs accidentally as a result of a software update. Well, Device Defender caught that because it looks like a spoofing attempt. And it alarmed to their operations team, who halted the deployment of the software because they realized they just made a major boo-boo. So this is one of those cool situations where security tools are also looking out for the operations side of your business. And that's something everybody should think about when they go home, is how can what I'm doing as a security professional drive better availability and reliability of my own internal IT infrastructure? And guess what, folks? If you can do that, the operations people go to finance with you and say, yeah, we need more investment here in this development team. Makes us all happier. You got to keep things classy. I mean, occasionally the axe just got to have the right flavor to it in the old-fashioned hat. But let's move from being reactive to being proactive. I hate being reactive. It drives me bananas. I don't like being behind the ball. It's a situation that I never want to be in if I can avoid it. And it's something that I think all of us need to focus on. And that is no more obvious to us when you look at the pace of innovation and launches across AWS. It is an area where we are struggling as a security team to keep up with all of our service teams out there. It is something that's super hard, and I bet you're in the same boat. Your developers out there push you at the edge all the freaking time because they're always getting better at delivering software. So we have to get better at delivering security along the way. The worst possible thing we can do as a security team, the worst thing, is to tell a service team no. Why? Because we're stopping the business and we're creating an enemy in somebody. They're going to look for a way to go around you as opposed to paying attention to you. So instead, we want to make sure that we're finding ways to get to yes. OK, I know what you want to do. The way you suggested, probably not the best. Here's an alternative, and here's how we're going to do it. 1,800 plus updates going on. I have no idea what the actual number is that'll be released in Andy's keynote tomorrow, but we'll see there. 239 of those were security updates. That's a pace that you'll see and a ratio that you'll see continue. And automated remediation is the best thing that you can focus on from now forward. Automated remediation, remember when I talked about how we have one SecOps on-call engineer? You cannot get to that point without automated remediation. Something happens, the system identifies it needs to do something, and takes a series of scripted actions. So for example, I get a GuardDuty alert on this particular virtual machine. I notice that it is not tagged as production, therefore I network isolate it and snapshot the disks that are on it, kicking off a forensic process automatically. Why does that need a human in the process? It doesn't. That's the kind of thing that you can automate and make your life a lot more effective. And to do it, you've got all the building blocks that are in place there. You've got the detection, the alerting, the identification, the log processing. Put them together in a way that makes sense for your business, and it helps you do your job more effectively, more easily. CloudWatch, Lambda, and Systems Manager are a great combination. There are more than a dozen pre-configured documents, by the way, that specify particular designs for automated remediation for functions that are out there. Take a look. They're an easy way to jumpstart what you're doing, make your life a little bit simpler, and also get moving more rapidly. This is the one I was just running through about snapshotting the EBS volumes associated with an EC2 instance. But it's something that people often think I have to automate my entire estate. No, pick one thing, and start it. Just get over that hump of learning how to do the automation, get used to doing it, get your operations teams cognizant of what's going on, and it'll help them do their jobs more efficiently. So fun fact about automation, one of the statistics that I put in the very beginning of my strategic planning document every year for Andy is the percentage of security tickets that my team processes that are completely automated. It's 94.6%. So 94.6% of the tickets that we get, and we get thousands and thousands and thousands, do not require a security engineer to touch them. Because the tooling identifies a problem, tickets the responsible party, escalates automatically if the responsible party doesn't engage, and when the responsible party says, yes, I fixed it, the tooling goes back and validates that they have. If they haven't, it reopens the ticket. If they have, closes the ticket, done. And that's one of the ways that we scale the security team to help keep up with the pace of the business. It's not only about scaling, it's also about responsiveness. None of us wants to be the guy who's sitting there going, oh, wow, there's something bad going on in my infrastructure, and then taking hours, days, weeks to understand what's really going on. When you work in a fully automated infrastructure, it means you can work more effectively, more quickly, and be more responsive to what's going on in your infrastructure. And speaking of responsiveness, you heard about Kinesis. It's our streaming data platform, quickly load terabytes of data per hour into AWS, and then applications can consume that data. We use it for a lot of our security services where we stream logs in, digest the logs, and analyze them. But it also has a physical security component that we've applied in our data centers. Kinesis video streams will stream directly off of our security cameras, process that, analyze it using recognition to understand license plate numbers and where people are in buildings, et cetera, and store it into Glacier for a ridiculously low price. We have not had the discussion of why is it so expensive to store video in a data center since we've gone to Kinesis video streams. So, enough of me talking. Let me ask one of our partners to come up on stage. Please welcome Michele Iacovone from Intuit.
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon. So when Steve invited me to do this talk, I thought it was the least I could do, because a little bit later in the week, I, along with about 20 or 25 of my industry peers, are going to gang up on him at the advisory council and complain about all the things that don't work and how we want AWS to go faster and do more for us. And actually complain probably about the fact that we don't want people to walk away with the impression that all you need is one on-call engineer to run security in the cloud, right? I thought this was a good opportunity to pull up the nose of the plane and really talk about what I think has been a remarkable journey for Intuit with AWS, a terrific partnership. Hopefully give you a perspective of some of the benefits that unlocked for Intuit, and give you a good sense for, these are not just benefits for Intuit, but I think they're benefits for companies, large enterprises that have sensitive data workloads that can benefit in the cloud. So with that, let me start with just a little bit of a background on Intuit. So Intuit is a company of about 8,000 employees that marches to the beat of one drum, and that's our mission, to power prosperity around the world. We serve small businesses, consumers, and self-employed, and we deliver three core benefits. We try to put more money in their pockets. We try to take some of the drudgery and create less effort for them as they're trying to manage their financial lives. And we deliver complete confidence. And so we try to take away that fear and uncertainty when you're filing taxes, when you're trying to run a small business. And when it comes to security and privacy, give them the confidence that we are great stewards of their data. So with that, I think some of you may know about Intuit, but it was founded in 1983. Our founder saw his wife struggling balancing the checkbook, and out of that enlisted his college roommate and created Quicken. Fast forward 35 years, we're a $6 billion company. We serve 50 million customers worldwide. and across 21 locations. So many of you recognize, I think, some of our cornerstone brands, so QuickBooks, TurboTax, and Mint. And the reason I think I'm speaking here in large part is we haven't just dipped our toes into AWS. We're running our flagship products as of last year, all in AWS at this point, and have gotten tremendous benefit from that. So why would a company like Intuit actually dabble into this? And for us, the main driver was speed and ease for our engineers and our operations team. We just saw an environment where we could get a lot more done with more effectively and more efficiently through public cloud. We're one of those businesses where about 30 million people come and do their taxes over 2 days. So elasticity and being able to scale up and down was very important for us. So getting some cost efficiency through that elastic model was very valuable. And then, probably the biggest reason and the reason why we really ended up with AWS was the strategic enterprise partnership and cultural fit. Intuit is a company that is customer obsessed, much like AWS and Amazon. Intuit is a company that highly values innovation. And at the time, this is about 2012, so it's about 6 years ago, for enterprises, there was still a lot to be built, right? And so this is really about making a bet with a partner that we could have the confidence that they could move with speed and get there fast. And so we definitely cashed in on that option over the last 6 years. So those were, we went in, and of course, as we did this, we discovered a lot more, right? Global reach, so we're expanding internationally aggressively. Recruitment, we found that attracting and retaining talent got better and easier. And then, from a security perspective, ironically, our mantra is public cloud done right actually improves security. And with it, it brings just a whole new set of innovation. And so we've really retooled and transformed our security team over the last 6 years into one of our elite engineering teams. And we've driven a lot of new patents, and I'll tout some of those benefits later. All right, but it wasn't all bed and roses, right? 2012 looked pretty sparse. There was a lot of things that we had to go build ourselves or partner with AWS. And one way to look at this is through, we use this security hierarchy of needs model to kind of look at what we needed to do. So starting with zoning and containment, so how do we govern boundaries inside a AWS account or across our entire fleet? Asset management, how do we know what our resources are, and more importantly, who owns them, and how do we get to those teams very quickly? How do we look at, we say prevention is ideal, but detection is a must. So how do we log, and how do we make sure we have the requisite visibility? Authentication, access control is critical, and last but not least, encryption. So back then, zoning and containment was tough. AWS account was kind of your boundary. And there were a lot of incidents with AWS account takeovers, and so we ended up parsing this up in a very fine-grained way where it was really not very operable. It was hard to operate. We had to find better ways. So this is where we started to partner with AWS on figuring out better ways, and I'll talk about some of those services. Asset management as well. I mean, knowing who owned what, which team owned what assets in the account was not always straightforward, and so we needed better ways to do that. On the logging side, there was little visibility at the time on what was happening both at the data and control plane. CloudWatch, CloudTrail didn't exist at the time, and so there was a lot of internal infrastructure that we had to develop and ultimately partner with AWS to shape the requirements for services. And around authentication and encryption as well, you'll see there's a number of services that we partner with them to ultimately deliver. So let's talk about zoning and containment, right? And so you saw we worked very closely with AWS on VPC, VPN connections, Direct Connect, WAF, and ultimately Private Link. And all of this has resulted in us being able to decommission lots and lots of our own infrastructure, lots of our own third-party VPNs and tools, and really, really simplify our operational costs. And at the same time has made our network attack surface a lot more compact, which has been, I think, a great thing from a security perspective. From an asset management perspective, Config has really helped us to figure out how to get rid of a lot of internal tooling and policy engines that we were custom building, and a lot of metadata that was quickly getting stale, and really being able to leverage that a lot faster, get a much more accurate and up-to-date inventory of AWS accounts and the resources. We're now able to actually respond faster and remediate faster because we can attribute issues a lot more quickly, largely thanks to orgs, right? Orgs really allows us in a complex enterprise organization to pinpoint and provide attribution to the right teams. And then, of course, lower operational costs and fewer headaches. Things like Certificate Manager and System Manager have really simplified some of the operational tasks for us. Now, try one more time. Logging. As I said, back in 2012, it didn't look pretty. And today we still make a lot of use of Splunk, but having CloudTrail, CloudWatch, VPC flow logs, and ability to have visibility and L3 packets, and coupled with Amazon GuardDuty, really takes our ability to derive much faster and better insights from all the data. So we coalesce this inside our security data lake and are able to have much more effective remediation and have lowered our false positives considerably. So being able to find that signal from all that noise and the petabytes of logs that we have has gotten far easier. Around authentication, orgs, again, really helps in this regard. AWS single sign-on has been a huge benefit for us to help us meet some of the fine-grained access control and meet compliance requirements. But we still have our own service, which we've co-developed with AWS, and I know Steve and team are working with to productize this and make it more broadly available. But for us, having roles with very fine-grained permissions that are also time-bound and really have zero administrative accounts in your AWS accounts was really, really important. And having the ability to do that, having a service that managed that for us was critical. And then, last but not least, around encryption, we partnered very heavily with AWS on KMS. Owning our own keys was a non-negotiable thing, and that service did not exist at the time. We also invested very heavily in our own application level encryption. We have 50 million users' data to protect, and we have lots of very fine-grained keys that encrypt very small bits of data, so our blast radius is very, very contained around that. So you put all that together, right, and you start to get a picture of kind of a wealth of services, and many of the services that Steve presented a little while ago are not even depicted here, because some of those are things that we're still piloting and still exploring ourselves, right? And so, but the landscape looks very different, right? And it's a much higher productivity environment. And so if you look at, from a security perspective, as a CISO, what were the benefits that we've derived here? And so I would say, first and foremost, faster detection and response, right? We're able also to lower security risks faster. What I mean by that is we can actually do more with less. And luckily for Intuit, we're actually doing more with more because we continue to invest in security. But the security portfolio and the types of initiatives that we have is far broader than what we've ever had, thanks to some of the productivity gains. We're also able to leverage the power of all the Intuit engineers. So we've had to, like Steve alluded on the SecOps model, we had to adopt and embrace a SecOps model. We call it DevSecOps. And that model has really enabled for us to not just have the few hundred people in security worry about security, but the 3,500 engineers across Intuit be part of the security response, prevention, and detection. Cost, I think we've lowered TCO considerably. We eliminated a lot of clones, and we are converging faster and faster on more AWS services. We also were able to overall increase the investment. It's not like our adversary are staying static, right? All of that is increasing, so we need to continue our investment and keep pace with our adversaries. And then, last but not least, innovation, right? We filed over 70 patents around and collaborated with AWS on dozens of services. So there's a lot that we've delivered across here. And it's also helped us accelerate the delivery of new platform capabilities across Intuit. So as we look forward, what are the things that are top of mind for me and probably several other CISOs on AWS? So demonstrable compliance is clearly one of them. And so you saw Inspector, Macy are all great services that we're right now piloting. And we love to figure out how to integrate and to create much faster, more efficient ways to achieve our compliance requirements, especially as they're increasing. And then, the barbarians are at the gate, right? Containers and serverless, the developers, the natives are getting restless. They want to move into these environments. And these environments are the ones that are delivering that speed and ease. And the security models for these environments are not yet very well thought through, understood. And so we're pioneering in this space. And I think this is going to be a super active area of partnership with AWS. So again, I want to just really thank AWS and the partnership that we've had over the last 6 years to help us continue to move forward and power prosperity around the world.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, less human interaction with data. It's a theme that I've focused a lot on. Get the people away from the data there. Because why? People make mistakes. And you'll just keep hearing that mantra appear in a lot of the ways that we do business and the services that we build over time. Security incidents in the news, these are the headaches that keep us all up at night. And if you look at the commonality across all of them, it's all about the people. It's about how did they use their access, who used their access, was it inappropriate, did something inappropriate happen with their credentials, et cetera. Minimizing attack surface is a super easy way to reduce your headaches, to reduce the amount of work you have to do in the future. Yes, it takes an upfront investment to do so, but it's something that's critically important to your ability to withstand the changing world that we all operate in. Intelligence. This is an area, this is probably my favorite quote that we have in any of these things, but it's one that I think is really, really, really important. And intelligence takes a lot of different casts within an organization. Threat intelligence is something everybody thinks about. It's something we consume as part of Amazon GuardDuty and that we provide to our customers as a result of the detections associated with that platform. But intelligence also is about your people. And these are the things that I hope you do, is understand what your people are doing when they're in contact with information. How are they using your data? What are they doing during their workday? Are they being responsible or not? And also, how is your software created? Who's building it? Where? What are the controls around it? Who's doing the code reviews? Who's validating that what's deployed is actually what you expect? Do you have tooling in place to identify the gaps between material that's put into your code repositories and the systems that are deployed across your infrastructure? To do so, take a look at your CI/CD pipelines. Catalog the controls associated with them. Go back and identify for yourself where you've got good visibility and where you don't. If you don't have visibility, you can't do anything else successfully. If you can do nothing else, get that visibility in place. And then set goals with the pipeline owners for hardening. Enforce those goals over time. Make them move to better environments. They'll love you for it in the end when their services are more reliable as a result. Deployment from source code. How much of your production systems are built from source each time? Can you establish that percentage right now? You should. Figure out how you're deploying from source, figure out how you should be deploying from source of the future, and get rid of human access to systems. I love the 80% number. It may not work for your business. Give it a shot if you can. It drives some very interesting behavior. And automation does one thing that's great for all of us here. It maximizes the availability of our most precious resource. That is the human beings who are our security engineers. Security engineers are incredibly valuable because they can navigate that gray middle area, They can use their good judgment to decide what should happen in a situation, as opposed to being automatons who simply type the same thing into a keyboard all the time. Use them for what they're best at. They will love you for it. You will retain them. You will hire better people and have a better security result. Automation keeps people happy. Build automation. When you interview a security engineer, do you ask them software development engineering questions? Do they understand how the build processes work? Have they been on a service team before? Do they know how to build software? These are all components of the process that we use when we hire security engineers. It helps us decide, is this person a builder or is this person a cop? I want builders. I want somebody who can help us get the job done as opposed to stopping things. The required fun Tolkien thing, a lot of our internal systems are named after Tolkien components. Why? Yes, you can figure it out yourself. It's fun. But what's next? What's next depends on what we're going to do now. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about provable security. Provable security is making sure that we can validate the correctness of software. It is understanding with precision whether or not we are meeting specific goals across our organization. Can we actually prove that the cryptographic system that we're implementing is sound, and it's using a random number generator that is truly random? We rerun the formal proof of our cryptographic number generators for S2N, which is our TLS implementation, every time we build the software. Every time, to ensure that it's doing exactly what we expect. Source control. Do people log into your boxes right now and do random things? Are there fixed credentials that have lived for years? Or do you have temporary credentials that are vended by something like Secrets Manager to your services or your systems, and your changes are committed into source code control that you can validate that they are correct? Traditional IT was a bunch of silos, people who didn't talk to each other, did things independently, didn't work with each other. You often had to cross organizational lines in an effort to try and figure out how you get something done. It slows things down. It allows gaps to form where security vulnerabilities can drop in and cause you all sorts of headaches. You should be moving to a situation where you use common services across your IT organizations to build software more effectively, more reliably. You should have central vendors of service control points that the security team can work with to enforce specific behaviors across everybody. If you look inside Amazon, we use one common build system across the company. That means that when we raise the bar on that one build system, everybody benefits from it. Shouldn't you as well across your company? When you build in compliance at the beginning, when you keep your auditors involved in building new services and systems from the beginning, you are much more effective at understanding whether you'll be able to meet specific compliance goals out the other end. That's hard for a lot of auditors to do, to come in as a system or software is being built and be a part of that process and help. But it turns into something you'll all love out the other end. Now, there are two keynotes that are coming up here, and this is the part of my talk where if it was last year, I would be announcing our new security services. But unfortunately, Andy decided that he was going to do the announcement about the new security services because he really likes them. So stay tuned during Andy's keynote for some security service announcements when it happens on Wednesday. We're really proud of the stuff that we're bringing forward now. This is another set of efforts from my team that will help you perform your job more easily and more effectively, and we think it's going to be something that you're going to love. Werner will talk a lot about building security into the automation pipeline, the build pipeline, and help you get some more hints in how you can do that effectively. There are some awesome breakouts to take advantage of. IAM, which is the control plane for permissions in our infrastructure. There's a great breakout on that tonight. Lambda, as a security team, the largest consumer of Lambda in AWS is the security team. Yes, we love automation. You should too. So learn about how to use Lambda to do your automation. We'll actually give you some examples of things that we've built that'll help you do your job, log processing, aggregation, that sort of thing. And then data protection. That's about making sure you've got the right controls and wraps around your information. So take a shot at those. They're worthwhile if you haven't already scheduled them. Well architected for security is about building things correctly the first time, making sure that you do it responsibly out of the gate. Netflix Cloud's Forensics, well, Netflix is just an awesome company to work with. So if you've got the time to go see them and you're interested in forensics, they've got a really cool process. Take a look at it. Security Jam. This is about actually doing security things. It's not talking about security things. It's actually prosecuting security events in a real environment. If you've never done this before, it's really, really fun. It's like a massive capture the flag kind of event. It's in the MGM Studio Ballroom on Thursday. We'll be taking that opportunity to go have some fun and do some real work on real systems. You should too. There's a Jam Lounge there. There's some partners who give you some environments and some scenarios that you can use to learn new skills. Take those skills home and take the training home with you as well and help your teams learn internally. The security booth itself, of course, is in the Venetian Expo Hall. Stop by and ask folks questions if you have them there. And my favorite part. We all love security conferences. This AWS reInvent is something that the largest attendance tends to be in the security tracks. It's something we're really proud of. We've heard from a lot of customers that you want an entire conference focused on security, security in the cloud, security in AWS, how to build successfully in the cloud. So June 25th and 26th in Boston, Massachusetts, we're going to be hosting AWS Reinforce, where it will be all about how to build security successfully and operate it. Lots of hands-on labs, lots of how-to sessions. It's all about getting the job done as security professionals. We'd love to see you there. And with that, I want to thank you very much for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Have a good one.